I refused to keep paying my mother-in-law's rent while on maternity leave, and now she's trying to ruin my marriage and drive a wedge between my husband and me. Hi, I'm Sarah, 28, and this is a story about how I stood my ground against my mother-in-law when she tried to manipulate me during a very vulnerable time in my life. At first, I thought I could handle it. After all, family is family, right? But when I was on maternity leave and trying to adjust to my new life with my baby, my mother-in-law made a request that pushed me to my limits. She asked me to keep paying her rent, something I had been doing for months. When I refused, she tried to tear apart my marriage and use my husband against me. And honestly, I didn't know what was coming next. Keep watching to find out how I handled this and what happened when everything came to a head. When I married Mark, I thought our life together would be everything I had hoped for, a peaceful, loving relationship where we could build our future side by side. What I didn't anticipate, however, was the overwhelming presence of his mother, Linda, and the increasingly heavy toll it would take on our marriage. At first, I didn't think much of Linda. She seemed like the typical protective mother, always looking out for her son. Mark and I had known each other for years before we tied the knot, and in that time, I'd learned that his bond with his mother was strong. While I wasn't thrilled about how often she inserted herself into our lives, I respected their relationship. After all, they had a long history together. But I didn't realize how much this dynamic would change after we got married. In the beginning, Linda's involvement in our lives seemed harmless, just the occasional phone call or visit. I remember laughing at how frequently Mark would talk to her, especially when we were first settling into our new home. He would answer her calls multiple times a day, always eager to check in on her. I didn't think too much about it, assuming it was just his way of showing affection for his mom. As time went on, though, things started to feel different. Linda began making more frequent visits, often unannounced, showing up at our house without any prior warning. She would bring small gifts for Mark and, of course, offer unsolicited advice on everything, from the way I cooked dinner to how we should be decorating our home. It wasn't just her presence that was wearing on me. It was the way she would subtly critique everything I did. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just her trying to help. But it wasn't long before I realized her help wasn't always what it seemed. When I found out I was pregnant, I had no idea just how much things would change. Mark was ecstatic, of course. We both were. But what should have been a time of celebration quickly turned into a whirlwind of added stress. As soon as I started my maternity leave, Linda began making her expectations clear. She needed more help. More than once, she would drop by to check on me, only to slip in the request for financial assistance. At first, it was a few minor bills here and there, just a small loan to help with her rent. I didn't think much of it. After all, I knew she wasn't in the best financial situation. But the requests didn't stop there. The first time Linda asked for me to pay her rent, I hesitated but agreed, thinking that it was a temporary solution to her struggles. I didn't want to be the person who turned her back on Mark's mom, especially when he was always so eager to help. But after that, the requests only grew more frequent. She wasn't just asking for a loan anymore. It became an expectation. I started to feel the financial strain myself, trying to cover my own expenses while on maternity leave, caring for our newborn, and keeping up with Linda's needs. It was overwhelming. Every time she asked, I felt this mounting pressure, like I was failing her if I didn't say yes. And each time I said yes, it took a little more away from what Mark and I needed. The breaking point came when Linda asked, once again, for me to cover her rent. I had just returned from a sleepless night with the baby, and the thought of having to pull money out of our savings just to help her felt like the final straw. I had been holding on, thinking it would all be temporary, but now it was clear that Linda was going to continue taking advantage of our kindness. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't know how to say no without feeling like I was going to upset Mark. But I had to be honest with myself. I was already stretched thin, and continuing to finance her lifestyle wasn't sustainable. And so, after carefully considering the impact on our marriage and our future, I made the decision to put my foot down. I refused to pay Linda's rent any longer. I was done being put in a position where I had to choose between supporting my mother-in-law and taking care of my own family. It wasn't easy. I knew it would upset Mark, and I dreaded the confrontation. But I couldn't let Linda's expectations ruin my own peace of mind, especially when I had my own family to think about. The day I made my decision to stop paying Linda's rent, I knew it wouldn't be an easy conversation. Mark had always been extremely loyal to his mom, and the thought of him being disappointed or upset with me was one of the hardest things I could imagine. But I had to stand my ground. I needed to tell him that enough was enough, and that we couldn't keep enabling Linda's behavior. I waited for the right moment when we were alone, after a long day of baby duties and work. Mark had just put our little one to sleep, and we were sitting in the living room, the quiet settling in after the chaos of the day. I took a deep breath, feeling my nerves bubble up. "Mark," I began, trying to steady my voice, "we need to talk." He looked at me with a concerned expression. "What's wrong? You've been quiet all evening." I hesitated for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "I've been thinking about Linda, and I can't keep doing this. I've been covering her rent for months, and it's taking a toll on me, on us. I can't do it anymore." Mark's face tightened at the mention of his mother. "What do you mean you can't do it anymore? You know how much she needs our help right now." I could see the frustration in his eyes, and I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I know you want to help her, but it's not just about helping her anymore. She's taking advantage of us. And I'm barely getting by as it is, trying to manage my maternity leave and care for our baby. I can't keep draining our savings just because she expects us to. It's not fair to us. Mark's expression softened, and for a moment, I thought he might understand. I get it, he said slowly. But she's my mom. I can't just ignore her when she's struggling. I know she's your mom, I replied, my voice rising just slightly. But I can't be the one who keeps bailing her out. You know how much this is affecting me, and you have to understand that it's affecting our family too. If we don't start putting boundaries in place, we'll end up with nothing left. There was silence for a moment as Mark processed my words. His eyes were downcast, and I could tell he was torn. He loved his mother, but he also loved me. The tension in the air was palpable. Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to her, he said quietly. But she's going to be upset. You know how she is. And this is going to make things complicated. I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want to cause problems between Mark and his mom, but I knew I had to prioritize our marriage and our own family's well-being. I know it will be difficult, I said, but it's time for things to change. The next day, Mark called his mom to tell her that we could no longer help with her rent. I wasn't sure what the conversation was like, but by the end of it, Linda's attitude had shifted dramatically. She was furious. The following day, she called me directly, and her voice was sharp, cold. You're putting him up to this, aren't you? She snapped. I know you don't want to help me, but I never thought you'd turn him against me like this. I could hear the hurt in her voice, but I wasn't swayed. This isn't about you, Linda. It's about us being able to function as a family without constantly worrying about your financial problems. There was a pause, then she dropped a bombshell. You think this is just about rent? You don't know the half of it. I'm not just asking for your help because I'm desperate. I've got a lot on my plate, and I'm not the one who's been making life difficult here. Her words confused me. What are you talking about? I'm talking about you, Emma, she continued, her voice sharp and vindictive. You think I'm the problem? Well, you've been nothing but a burden on this family from the start. I was stunned. What are you accusing me of now? Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean, she hissed. Mark deserves better than someone who constantly drags him down. The call ended abruptly, and I sat there in disbelief. What was going on? Why was she attacking me like this? Hadn't I been the one who had always tried to be supportive of their relationship? I knew I had made the decision to say no to her requests, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't just about the money. I knew I couldn't back down now. But I also knew that things were about to get a lot more complicated. The days that followed Linda's venomous phone call were a blur. Mark and I tried to go about our daily routine, but the tension between us was undeniable. He was caught between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me. Every time we tried to talk about it, it felt like we were going in circles, with no resolution in sight. Then, one evening, everything changed. Mark came home from work looking more tired than usual, and his expression was unreadable. Emma, he said quietly, we need to talk. I could already tell from his tone that something had shifted. What's going on? I asked, setting the baby down for a nap. Linda, he hesitated, struggling to find the right words. She's been spreading lies about you. To everyone. I froze. What kind of lies? Mark sighed and sat down next to me, running a hand through his hair. She's been telling people that you're selfish, that you're only thinking about yourself, and that you're keeping me from helping her. She's even gone as far as telling some of our mutual friends that you've manipulated me into abandoning her. I could feel my chest tighten. This was beyond what I had expected. That's absurd, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She's trying to turn everyone against me. Mark's eyes were filled with frustration. I know. I've tried to tell her that it's not like that, but she won't listen. It's like she's got this agenda to make me choose between her and you. I had heard enough. This is ridiculous. I've done nothing but try to be a good daughter-in-law to her, and now she's making me out to be the villain. Mark nodded, looking defeated. She's even started accusing me of being a bad son because I'm not taking care of her the way she expects me to. It's tearing me apart. I felt a surge of determination. We're not going to let her do this to us. We need to set boundaries, and we need to make it clear that she can't manipulate us anymore. Mark was quiet for a long moment. I agree, he said finally, though his voice was tinged with doubt. But I don't know how to fix this without causing more drama. I don't want to lose her, but I don't want to lose you either. I reached out and took his hand. We'll get through this, Mark. But I'm not going to stand by and let her tear us apart. She needs to know that we're a team, and that means prioritizing our own family first. And that's when it happened, the bombshell I wasn't prepared for. The following day, I received a message from Linda. At first, I thought it was another angry rant, but when I opened it, my heart sank. It was a simple text, but the implications were massive. If you don't help me with my rent, I'll make sure everyone knows what really happened. I'll tell them everything about you and Mark. All the secrets. I felt a chill run through me. What was she talking about? What could she possibly have on me? It didn't make sense. I hadn't done anything wrong, so what was she threatening to reveal? I immediately showed Mark the message, and his face went pale. What does she mean by everything? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. I don't know, he replied, his voice trembling. But I'm starting to think she's been holding on to something. Something big. It was like a dark cloud had descended over our lives, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Linda had been playing a much deeper game than I had ever imagined. Mark and I decided to confront Linda head-on, and we arranged to meet her at a cafe the next day. When we sat down, Linda's demeanor was calm, too calm. She was playing her part, acting as if nothing was wrong. But the tension between us was palpable. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What secrets are you referring to?" Linda's eyes gleamed with something unspoken. "You really think I wouldn't find out, Emma? You think I didn't notice the way Mark looks at you? I know everything, and if you don't help me, I'll make sure he does too." I was taken aback. Was she implying that Mark had some kind of hidden affair or guilt he hadn't shared with me? Was this really just about the money? Or was it something much more sinister? Before I could process it, Linda leaned in closer, her voice a low whisper. "I have proof, you know. And if I go public with it, you'll lose everything. Your reputation, your marriage, everything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What had she been hiding, and why was she doing this? The next few days felt like a whirlwind, as if we were caught in a storm with no clear way out. The threat that Linda had made hung over us like a dark cloud, and it became clear that things were about to get even more complicated. But the more I thought about it, the more determined I became to put an end to her manipulations once and for all. I couldn't let her tear apart the life Mark and I had worked so hard to build. Mark and I spent hours talking through everything. It became painfully clear that Linda had been controlling him for years, using guilt and manipulation to get whatever she wanted. The way she had positioned herself in his life, it was as if she expected to always be his #1 priority. But what about us? What about our family? It was time to confront this head-on. No more hiding, no more excuses. I needed to stand my ground for myself and for my family. The decision was made. We would meet with Linda again, but this time, we weren't going to be intimidated. We needed to draw clear lines, no more bending to her will. We had to fight for our future and make it clear that her games wouldn't work on us anymore. When we arrived at the cafe for our next meeting, Linda had a smug look on her face, as if she had won already. But this time, I wasn't playing by her rules. "Linda," I began, my voice steady but firm, "we're done with your games. I don't know what you think you have on me, but it's clear that you've been using manipulation and threats to control Mark and drive a wedge between us. That ends now." Linda raised an eyebrow, as if she didn't understand the gravity of the situation. "You think you can just ignore what I know?" she scoffed. "I'm not ignoring anything," I replied, my voice unwavering. "But you're not going to get away with using this as leverage anymore. If you have something to say, then say it. But I won't let you destroy my marriage or my family." Mark, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke up. "You don't get to control me anymore, Mom. I'm done with this. You're not going to keep using me to get what you want." For the first time in years, it felt like Mark was standing up for us. And it was the most empowering thing I had seen in a long time. Linda's confident exterior started to crack. "You think I'll just let this go?" she hissed. "I'll ruin everything. I'll tell everyone about the secrets you've been hiding, Emma. I know about the affair." Mark's eyes widened, and I felt my heart drop. "What affair?" he asked, his voice trembling. Linda's smile was twisted. "You really don't know? You thought you were the only one she'd ever loved," she said, leaning in. "I know about the man she's been seeing behind your back, Mark. And I've got all the proof I need." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from beneath me. My mind raced, trying to process her words. What was she talking about? There had never been anyone. But Linda was looking at me like she had just struck a deadly blow. I tried to steady my breath. "You're lying," I said through clenched teeth. "There's no affair. There's nothing you can threaten me with." But Linda wasn't done. "We'll see about that," she said, standing up to leave. "Just remember, you were warned." As she walked away, Mark and I were left in stunned silence. The weight of her words hung in the air. But there was one thing I knew for certain now. I wasn't going to let her destroy us. I couldn't let her win. In the days that followed, Mark and I took decisive action. We reached out to a lawyer, making sure we were both protected. Linda's threats of exposing an affair were baseless, and we needed to be prepared for whatever she might try next. We also made it clear to our friends and family that we would no longer tolerate her manipulative behavior. We started setting boundaries with Linda, refusing to let her come between us. We let her know that we were no longer willing to play her games or allow her to control us. She could either accept our boundaries, or she could stay out of our lives for good. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if we had made the right choice. But as time went on, it became clearer that we had done the right thing. Linda slowly stopped trying to manipulate us, though her resentment never fully disappeared. She still tried to reach out on occasion, but we remained firm in our decision to keep her at arm's length. Our marriage slowly began to heal. We were finally able to move forward without the constant threat of Linda's interference. And in the process, Mark and I grew closer than we had been in years. We learned to trust each other again, to communicate more openly, and to prioritize our own happiness above all else. But the real victory came when we realized that we had fought for each other and our family. We had taken a stand against the toxicity that had been lurking in the shadows for so long. And now we were stronger than ever before. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.